This morning's shiurim, all the shiurim this morning, are sponsored by Rabbi Stephen and Kim Ettinger, memory of his parents, Rav Tzvi Binyamin ben Abraham Yehuda Zachron Lebracha, Rabbi Tzvi Ettinger. Yartzeit was on the 18th of Adar, just a few days ago, actually yesterday, come to think of it. And Genesha Zelda Bas Tzvi Hirsch, Leah Shalom, Mrs. Jean Ettinger. The Yartzeit was today. Wow, a day apart, the Yartzeit. And as usual, all our shiurim here are dedicated in memory of Elisheva Frist, Elisheva Simabat, Zalman, Zechonah Lebracha. Next week, Wednesday, Miss Hashem, we will have a shiur, yes. This will be the last year of the particular season before Pesach. I would have come the next week too, but I think the center is closing up for Chufshat Pesach. So next week we're going to do the poem Vahi B'Chatzi Halayla from the Haggadah. Okay, so I'm sure many of us remember it. Those of us who made two Sidorim once upon a time ago. Remember there was such an animal called Seder Sheni? Remember that one? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there were two poems at the end of the Haggadah. One was Vahi B'Chatzi Halayla, the other was Ba'amartem Zevach Pesach. But here we at Baruch Hashem have one Seder, so we say both poems. So we'll talk about this next week. The poem of Vahi B'Chatzi Halayla, and it was at midnight, and the significance of Chatzot Laila of Leil HaSeder. So that'll be both in preparation of Pesach and as well as another very, very beautiful poem that we will deal with. Today, and I'm going to express my ignorance because I don't take attendance here. You're not wearing name tags, and therefore, the wonderful gentleman sits in the back of the room here. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. I should have asked. Abi Schreibman? Schreiber. Abi Schreiber. I'm sorry. I apologize. Because we never caught anybody's names. And I'll tell you the honest truth, if 3 years ago you would have told me the name, in all likelihood, I would still have to ask you your name, but that's the way it is. So Avi Schreiber asked me several weeks ago, when are we going to do Eshet Chayil? And then he got off my tail and decided to pass on the request to someone else who is a true Eshet Chayil sitting right here. And my Eshet Chayil told me that you're going to do Eshet Chayil. Right. Beseder. So if you want to know who is the Eshet Chayil from Sefer Mishlei, so ladies, look in the mirror. Oh, that was so sweet. So Eshet Chayil is the tail end of Sefer Mishlei. Mishlei is one of the three very important books of Shlomo Melech: Shir Hashirim, Mishlei, and Kohelet. Shir Hashirim is a very optimistic take. I mean, it's a romantic poem that Chazal explained. It's Rabbi Akiva who says, if all the Sfarim are Kodesh, Shir Hashirim is Kodesh Kodeshim, it's the Holy of Holies. And our Rabbi Rav Soloveitcher gave an interpretation to that, and he said, every Sefer of Tanakh you can understand on its simple pshat level, what's called the level of basic understanding, and then you can go deeper into the midrash. But that's like, taking it to a in-depth understanding. So that's already beyond the Kodesh. But Shir Hashirim cannot be understood on its simple level. It's not a love poem. And if you think it's a love poem, the Rav said you shouldn't even make Birkat HaTorah. That's not what it is. It's only Kodesh Kodeshim. It could only be understood as a mashal, an analogy to the great love between a Kadosh Baruch Hu and Am Yisrael. Some explain it as the love between a Kadosh Baruch Hu and the particular Jew. There are two takes on it, but it's clearly a mashal. It's clearly an analogy to the love between a Kadosh Baruch Hu and either the Jew in particular or Am Yisrael collectively. So it's a very upbeat, positive, type of song that we read it on Pesach. And then there's Kohelet, which is the flip side, and it's rather depressing. And everything you've done in life, you find out is all hevel, is all nonsense. And until you get to the very end of Kohelet, Sof Davar Kol Nishmat Elokim Yirah. Okay, so there was Yirat Shamayim, and some people say that last pasuk was the salvaging pasuk. It just because Chachamim wanted to just exclude it from the canon part of Tanakh, Sefer Kohelet, but somehow the last pasuk was a redeeming feature, and then it made the whole book make sense on some level. But and Mishlei is proverbs, we call it in English. It's sayings of chokhmah, of wisdom. So there is a whole discussion in the Medrash as to this chronological order of Shlomo Melech's authorship of these three books. But the most accepted view is that he writes Shir Hashirim when he's young, he writes Kohelet in mid-age, and he writes, Mishlei in mid-age, and he writes Kohelet at the end of his life. Because somehow or another reflects youth, there's more optimism, and there's a lot of love in the air. And the Mishlei, somebody who's in his mature age is talking, with some sense. And Kohelet, towards the end of one's life, perhaps a person is saying, everything I did, I tried a lot of things, but this was a waste of time, and that was a waste of time. And that's basically what Shlomo Melech, to a large degree, is saying at the end of end of his life. Now, the end of the life of Shlomo Melech was age 52, by the way. He dies at he was king for 40 years. But so we're going to talk about Mishlei. Now, we're not going to talk about the whole book of Mishlei. We're talking about the last part of the last chapter of Mishlei, starting from Pasuk Yud. What I have here is Mishlei Lamed Aleph, Perek Lamed Aleph, which is the last chapter of Mishlei, and it's from Psukim Yud until Lamed Aleph. And if you just take a look at the poem as we know it, because we sing it Friday night, and what I just played before was Ben Shneyan Schenker's version, which becomes hallmark of the Mozhitza Nigunim repertoire. So it follows the Aleph Bet. Right, Eshet the Aleph, Batach the Bet, Gimelatu Tov the Gimel. So you have Shlomo Melech writing a poem following the Aleph Bet scheme. He's not the first to do that. Even David Melech, his father, in we call Ashrei, Tilala David, Aro Mincha, Becholda, Gedolish, and Dolador, Hadar Kloradecha. And so you have poems already in Tehillim that follow the Aleph Bet scheme. And certainly in the Middle Ages, many would follow the Aleph Bet scheme. But here you have it in the Mishlei. So the question is, who is the Eshet Chayil that is being lauded in this particular song? And we can readily understand why people would sing it Friday night after one's Eshet Chayil, one's Balat Habayit, has done everything possible to prepare for Shabbat and ready to make a Kiddush. So it's just a beautiful testimony to one's Eshet Chayil. And to sing it, however you sing it, or to say it, some communities, they don't have musical talents like the Litvaks, so they just say it. And beseder. But the idea of being such a declaration is actually very, very moving, beautiful, and hakarat hatov, so showing appreciation on the highest level. It almost is the flip side of a nasty joke that was pumped into a 14th century Haggadah Shel Pesach, of all places coming from Germany, which was an illuminated manuscript. I actually saw this with my own eyes in the Emunah College when I was affiliated with them many years ago in the library. They had the whole book of illuminated manuscripts. So there was the section where you point to matzah zu shanu ochlim, so you have a picture of the Baal Habayit, he's pointing to the matzah, and then it says Moror Zer, and he's pointing to his wife. I mean, it's a known thing. It's a known thing. I told this once to my wife. She said, "Try it." It'll be the end of the Seder for me. But it's a horrible thing. It's okay, Marati, yeah. But it's just you'd think that. It's just not funny. It's just not funny, after everything a wife does to get the house ready for Pesach. So, they thought this was funny. The funny part is that usually the Diekis don't have a sense of humor. That's the funny part. They have a sense of humor, but it's a little bit. That's their sense of humor. Okay. So, without looking at the source page yet, the question of who is the Eshet Chayil, so Kiminyan HaParshanim, as many Parshanim as we have, Kiminyan HaPerushim, we have enough, that number of explanations, who might be. So Rashi, I mean, this is, he must be a Litvak. Rashi says the Eshet Chayil is TORAH. That's what it is. It's TORAH. You thought it was, a wife, a precious woman, maybe somebody's mother, maybe a mother-in-law, I don't know. But whatever. And here Rashi is going to explain this. This is all allegorical and has to do with TORAH. Okay. Shma bini musar avicha, val titosh torat imecha. So there's an association with Torah and aim and so on in Mishlei. So here, Eshet Chayil Yimsa, maybe it's Torah. Others suggest that it's Al-Shich, Ramosh Al-Shich, 16th century Kabbalist. He says it's one's personal nefesh. Everybody has a spiritual dimension, and we have to understand this parak in terms of understanding one's spiritual dimension. So, however they define Eshet Chayil, that's going to impact on the Perush for the next 22 psukim, all the way to the end. Everything's going to have to follow through. Ibn Ezra thinks, it's a pshat thing, and he says we're dealing with a woman who is very, very bold and is able to become rich, and rich through her chokhmah, that she really does have wisdom. She's a wise person, and she's able to accumulate things in life, which are positive, no doubt, but he sees it as a pshat thing. In the Midrash, it's in Midrash Eich and Midrash Rabbah of Mishlei, it identifies we have a name. Her name is Ruth. Ruth HaMoaviyah. And the reason that Chazal came up with that name is because in Megillat Ruth, in Perek Gimel, Pasuk Yud Aleph, it reads, Boaz says, V'ata biti al tir'i, kol asher tomri e'aseh lach, ki yodea, ki shar ami, ki Eshet Chayil at. You are an Eshet Chayil. She's the only one in Tanakh who's identified as an Eshet Chayil. And we know that she is the Ima Shel Malchut, the matriarch of the royalty, because as the Megillat Ruth ends with the genealogy after Boaz, it goes to Yishai, and Yishai holded it David. The last word of Megillat Ruth is David HaMelech. And this is one of the reasons that we actually read Megillat Ruth on Chag HaShavuot, because not only because of the message of conversion, of Gerut, which Ruth is a Kiyoret, and the whole process of Matan Torah is a process of conversion. The Rambam learns all the laws of conversion from Ma'amad Har Sinai, how we became OUIsrael. And the practical ceremonies is derived from Ma'amad Har Sinai. And he says it clearly. So that's one of the reasons we read Ruth. But the other is that David HaMelech, according to tradition, was born and passed away on Chag HaShavuot. So there's an association to David HaMelech, and it says Yishai holded it David, but the Ima Shel Malchut is Ruth. And here Shlomo Melech is signing off this book. Now he's written already about Eshet Chayil in Perek Yud Bet. We don't have it on the page. In Perek Yud Bet Pasuk Dalet, it says Eshet Chayil Ateret Ba'ala. So the phrase is already used earlier on in the book, and now he's coming back to Eshet Chayil mi himself. Who can find the Eshet Chayil? So let's just see it in a pshat and see what some of the Parshanim had to do with this. So just to make this a little bit easier, we have the text on a page with all the English translations. And again, it's not my English translation, but it's one of many English translations. So you sometimes the translation takes into consideration already some of the Perushim. But let's just run through it quickly, and then we'll go back to highlighting certain psukim of the Eshet Chayil. Eshet Chayil miyotza, who could find an Eshet Chayil? It's a rarity. V'rachok b'pninim michira. It's as rare as jewels, as pearls that can be picked up with a lot of money in a sale of sort. It's not easy to find. Not easy to find. A michra could also come from the word dig. You have to dig for it, just like pearls aren't just out there on the street. You have to find it. You have to search for it, and so on. It's something that's not so obvious. Batach ba lev ba'ala. Her husband has great confidence and trust in her. Okay? Shalal lo yechsar. he's missing nothing. In other words, she provides. This is a woman who is able to provide. The word shalal sometimes in the army means booty. Means booty, But here, the shalal means she's accumulated things. So maybe she never throws anything out. Like there are some people who, well, that's why they have bedikas chametz, so you can finally throw things out. Gemalatu tov velora. She repays his good and never his harm. In other words, she's makira tov. She realizes that he's a good man, and she recognizes that, and she rewards him. And if he does something out of order, she doesn't take it to heart. Kol yemei chayav, for the entire life. Dor shatzema ufishtim batas bechefetz kapeha. She seeks out wool and flax and so on. She's able to knit and weave and put clothing together. Batakum ba'od laila. She gets up in the middle of the night while it's still night. She's an early riser. Sometimes when we go to shul in the morning at 6 o'clock, so we pass the bus stops. What? I'm sorry. Small print. Haita koyaniot socher mimercha tavi lachma. That she says, she's as if to say an international merchant. She's on the ships, on the shipping line, and from a far distance, she's willing to bring her bread, which means she's willing to go long distances to bring the parnasa in, and so on. Batakum ba'od laila. She'll get up in the middle of the night or towards the end of the night. I said sometimes at 6 in the morning, you see people waiting in the dark yet, for a bus. They're going to work. They've gotten up at 5 in the morning to do this. Batitan teref leveta. Teref in this case means provisions for a household. V'chok l'narata, and even her servants have. Remember, we used the word the chukat lechem chuki. It's basic bread. Basic bread. Now she provides also for everyone in that house, for the family and for the household. Maybe teref means meat, because tarof toraf. You have the word treifa, or basar basadet treifa lo tochelu. So it could be that for household she's got some luxurious food. And chok lechem or lechem chuki means basic staple. So for the servants, okay, she provides. Maybe they're not getting the royal treatment. Zamama sadeva tikachehu. She's she will go out to the field. And she will buy things mipri chapeha natakarem, and what she earns, she will be able to plant vineyards. No, she invests in what she has extra. Chogra ba'ozmat neha. She binds or ties her loins. It means her garment is bound with a belt of sorts. And she shows her muscles, her strength. Ta'ama ki tov sachara lo yichbe b'layla neira. She's aware that what she's accomplished is good, and the light is always burning at night. She's always busy, even in the nighttime hours. Yadeh shilcha b'kishor v'chapeh tamchu palach. So I'm going to speak about this a little later, what kishor is and what palach is, but the pshat is there are two instruments that are used for weaving, and her hands, are with it, and our palms are with it, and we'll see what this means. But the pshat is that has something to do with also textile production. Kappa parsa le'ani, her hand is spread out, her palm is spread out to help poor people. Yadea shilcha le'avyon, her hand sends out for also poverty-stricken. Lo tirali, which means she's not selfish. She's not selfish. She does a lot for her family, but she's also looking outside. Lo tirali veita mishaleg, and her whole household is not fearful from cold. Right, it says shaleg, it means it's not cold. Ki kol beita lavush shanim, she has provided blankets from all kinds of red, shanim is actually a red dye type of wool. Marvadim astala sheshvar gaman lavusha, this also is blankets, it's clothing, she's provided, and very nice also. Noda b'sha'arim ba'ala, her husband is known in the gates of the city. Gates of the city is always where the respectable people, in a shul you'd call it the Mizrach wall. But in the days of Tanakh, it was the gates of the city, where Boaz sat and so on. We're familiar with this. That's where they held court, Beit Din. He said, "V'shifto im ziknei aretz." He would be sitting with the elders of the people. So she was known. It refers to the woman. What was that? He doesn't work. She's doing the work. She's doing the work. So shar meaning the price, or the shar ma'bechutz, where they money changers. Okay, so Miriam is saying that the sha'ar we use today, the rate of exchange at the bank, which is called the shar yatzig or shar matbeachutz, is because at the gate of the city they would be engaged in money changing in all kinds of things, right? Beseda. So she's known. Sadina stava timkor v'chagor laknani, again referring to a textile that she's made and she's sold. It goes back and forth that she's an involved. She's not a lazy lady, and it said that later on. Oz v'hadar levusha. She's dressed, very much touched up nicely. Vatischak liyom acharon, and she's got a smile till the last day. She's not a depressed woman at all. Pia potcha b'chokhmah, which opens a mouth, wisdom comes out. Torah chesed alushana, and she speaks with a language of chesed. Sophia halichot beita. She's looking after her family. Velechem atzlut lo tochel. There's no stale bread that's offered. Everything's fresh. Komu banea vayashua. The children get up and they just sound their praises. And ba'ala vayaluha. So too the husband. No, she's appreciated. She's a woman who is keenly appreciated at home. Rabot banot asuchayel. Right? Kadosh Baruch Hu made many daughters. Ve'at alit al kulana, your tops. Sheker hachein vehevel hayofi. So this is a great pasuk, because what does it mean that she didn't look good? Is he saying sheker hachein vehevel hayofi? We're going to go back to this pasuk, and so vanity is this is not what we're looking for. Isha yirat Hashem hi titalal. We're looking for a God-fearing woman. Tenula mipri yadeha. Let her give from the fruits of her hand. Let everybody see. V'halaluha basharim maaser. And again, at the gates, everybody's going to praise her deeds. Okay, so this is the poem. Let's take it from the top. So I want to focus on pasuk Yutet, the middle of the poem. Okay, up until then, every pasuk can be explained blow by blow, but we cannot do the whole thing. So I prepared just a few lines. In pasuk Yutet, which begins with Yutet, Yadea Shilcha Bakishor, V'chapeha Tamchu Palach. So the English translation is, she puts her hand to the distaff. Now I am stuck, because I don't know what a distaff is. It's a weaving thing. Right. It's a loom. Right. There you go. Okay. There we go. Okay. Enkamo bal nisayon. And her palms support the spindle. Right. Thank you. Okay. So what is the first look? Let's look at the source page now. Source page, Mitzudat David. Mitzudat David is a classic perush on Nevi'im. When people study Nevi'im in schools, so after looking at Rashi and perhaps Radak or Ibn Ezra, they look at Mitzudat David. I would even say that sometimes they look at Mitzudat David before they look at anything else, because it's easy. It makes the reading easy. He just takes you with the hand and runs through the psukim. And he says here, Imki choshevet b'schora, in spite of the fact that she's business conscious. What we've seen before this pasuk Yutet, right? She's hayta ka'aniyot socher b'merchak tavi lachma. She's got international commerce on her mind. She's got other things that are business mind on her mind. And now it says Yadea shulchan b'kishah, in spite of the fact that she's business conscious. Bikol makom, mikol makom. I'm reading source number 1 from Mitzudat David. Lo zaza mimelechet nashim v'toshit yadeha le'echos b'kishor v'litnot b'pelech v'hem kli hatvia. They are instruments of weaving. Now, I looked in Rashi just to see if he could help me out, and he was very helpful. He gave me 2 words in French. So what do you do in the yeshiva when you get to bala'az? So that's when we learned the word bala'az. And and it was translated b'loshon am zar, in foreign language. So la'az wasn't the language called la'az. The la'az you can say in English, bala'azit. We use it in modern Hebrew, right? In foreign language. So that's what la'az is. It's la'azit. It's loshon am zar. It's in foreign language. Rashi's la'az is his Yiddish. It's his Yiddish. It's written in Aleph Bet. So the Yiddish today is basically a German dialect with Aleph Bet, with some Hebrew words thrown in just to give it Yiddish a tam, to give it some Jewish flavoring, right? So that's our Yiddish. And it's not, if you heard a German person speaking German, hear somebody in Borough Park speaking Yiddish, it's not going to sound exactly the same. Just like when you hear somebody from Texas speaking English. He doesn't speak English, right? Or British listening to an American, It's a foreign language. Okay, beseda. So we understand that. But I always talk about the Aramaic of the Gemara and the Judeo-Arabic of the Rambam and Rabbi Yehuda Levi and the Ladino of the Spanish community and the Laz of Rashi and our Yiddish. It's one phenomenon. It's Jews taking the local language and being Megayer, making it a little, Judaizing it a little bit, making it a little bit Yiddish. And so Rashi has this. Beseda. So the Rav son, Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, when he taught Gemara in the yeshiva in YU, so he made sure that you went to the old French dictionary and you looked it up. He didn't know from laziness, but I'm lazy, so I didn't look it up. So I don't know what Rashi used 2 words in French. So let's get to what the Malbim. So Rashi is the Mitzudat says something very, very profound. In spite of the fact that this is a woman who's very business oriented, she never neglected her domestic chores. As a family, as a wife, as a mother, as a family person, and she was doing the things that other women would do who were not so engaged in international commerce or whatever outside the house. That's a very, very important message. Because today, in modern days, where women have the opportunity, the sky's the limit. Women can do everything. It was one of the reasons the Rav said, of course a girl can learn a piece of Gemara. She can become a doctor and a lawyer. So why can't she learn a piece of Gemara? There's nothing that's really closed from a woman today. But there are some women who think that getting out there and developing themselves in career and so on, it's going to come at a price. Either they won't get married, or if they will get married, they'll have very small families. They'll have very small families. They're going to have housekeepers the whole time. They don't get dirty, doing things. This Eshet Chayil was out there, but she was also at home, not neglecting any of the chores. And that's why she was Eshet Chayil. Really, this was a special woman. The Malbim in source number 2 actually takes this to a completely different direction and sees the whole pasuk as an analogy. He takes the 2 psukim of Yutet and Kaf. So Yadeh Shilcha Bakishor V'Chapeh Tamchu Palach. Her hand stretches out for some type of a instrument that's a weaving instrument, and her palm also Tamchu B'Pelach. He's going to talk about the difference between shiluach, to send out, and tmicha, to help and assist. What does that mean? And it says kappa parsa le'ani, her hand is spread out for the poor. V'yadeha shilcha le'evyon, and her hand is stretched out for the poverty-stricken. So the Malbim says yadeha shilcha b'kishor, shilcha le'evyon. He's just quoting the psukim. V'chapeha tamchu palech, parsa le'ani, he'ani mitzayim oni hanefesh. The word poor is not in the economic sense, but it means poor spirituality level. The person's nefesh is on the low on the totem pole. V'ha'evyon mitzayin. What is the difference between ani and evyon? Because we use it as a synonym. Ani ve'evyon. We use it together. But he says 2 things. Evyon means dalut haguf. Dalut haguf means physical poverty. Physical poverty. V'hayadayim mitzaynim ma'aseh. Activity. That's what hands are. Symbolizes activity. Masha shalcha yadeha bakishor v'kisharon, v'gama kishur, who aids. He's talking about something that locks something in. Locks something in. And why would a person be locked in? He says, just like, I'm going to read it quickly, she'elav osrim et ha'nesarim b'kela, like a jail bar, locked in. He says that I'm scanning down, a person's nefesh sometimes is locked up. Locked up. And what this woman does is stretches her hand. I'm reading now from the fourth line. Tishlach bo yadeha hapoelet mitzvot u'ma'asim tovim shebam tizakech et hachomer v'hitir asurav. What she's able to do is stretch out her hand and give assistance. Tamchu palech. Give assistance to somebody, and the assistance is measured in Torah and ma'asim tovim, in good deeds. And that's how she's able to unlock people whose spirituality is all locked up. I mean, look how he takes this pasuk, which seems to have nothing to do with spirituality, and he's talking about an individual who has the ability to reach out to people who are tied up, locked up, and unable to develop their spiritual side, and impress upon them a spiritual dimension that is going to catch, and therefore those nefashot, those spiritual imprisoned people are going to feel relieved and freed from this. V'yadayim eile tishlach li'evyon. What does that mean? V'yadayim eile tishlach li'evyon. Ratzano lomar reish lamed ratzano lomar lefi shehaTORAH govra alav. Oh, he's getting into hatava. I'm sorry. Hatava govra alav. Shayidei sheyir'u masei yadav v'tzidkato yilmedu la'asot kamohu ulitgaber al chomram. People have all kinds of lusts and desires, but she's going to show them the way of the righteous way, and they're going to be able to overcome those natural material inclinations. Okay, so we've seen something here of the Malbim, and he finishes off also that this is a message of spread of Torah. Beautiful. He takes it in his dimension. What does the Vilna Gaon have to say? That is a Pirush of the Vilna Gaon on Sefer Mishlei. So in source number 3, Yadea sholcha b'kishor v'chaper tamchu palech. And he says kishor comes from the word ksherim, righteous people, good people, proper people. She yochezet bahem tamid. She latches on to people who are good. You know, people latch on to other people. That's very important. Social contact, very important. I mean, Robinson Crusoe on a deserted island is not the way that the Torah wanted. Lo tov heyota adam levado, esed lo ezer kenegdo. The idea that people shouldn't be alone. And the Rabbi wrote a whole piece on this, and today it's sold as a book, but it was an article in 1965 in the tradition of the Rabbinical Council of America. Lonely man of faith. And there he says that levado doesn't mean alone, but it means loneliness. It's two different things. Being alone, it just means that you're in the room alone. You bring another person in, so you're not alone. But you may not have anything to do with that person. You may not be interested in having anything to do with that person. So, but you're not alone. So the Torah is not talking about that Adam shouldn't be alone. But there's a certain, the Rabbi used a philosophical term, existential loneliness that a person has that he needs to share with somebody or with a group or with a community, and people need this. And the Torah is interested that human beings, that OUisrael for sure, should cultivate this social side. So the idea of latching on to somebody, so you have to know who to latch on to. So the kishor, according to the Vilna Gaon, is the ksherim, people who are kosher people. Yeah.
My mother always said, tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are.
Tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are. Yafeh, yafeh, yafeh. Okay. Yeah. Did he write that about himself? You're asking about the Vilna Gaon, or you're asking about the Rav? The Rav looked in the mirror when he wrote Lonely Man of Faith. There's no question about it. When he wrote the article in 1944, Ish Halacha, he was looking at a picture of his grandfather, Reb Chaim Soloveitchik from Brisk. That's no question about it. He even alludes to that. Lonely Man of Faith, there's even more than one allusion to the fact that he was writing about himself. If you remember the film that was put out in 2006, so there was a Rabbi Wolgemuth that was interviewed, a fellow from Boston, and he says he was the loneliest person I ever met. And the truth is, the Rav was a lonely person. He was a lonely person, and he found solace in his wife. And that's why when she passed away in 1967, the Rav did something that was so uncharacteristic for anybody in the Vilna Gaon tradition. He went to the cemetery every Friday for the rest of practically the rest of his life. I mean, he even said it was obsessive. He even himself admitted that it was obsessive. He said he couldn't help it. He couldn't help it.
His only friend.
It was his only. It was his only friend. Right. Yeah.
And just one thing. That last line, going back to the mama for a second.
Yeah.
I don't need to wade into a somewhat controversial topic, but if her role is, to reinforce people, that for her to be involved with teaching Torah would imply part of a woman's role is to learn Torah, to be able to teach Torah.
Okay, so you'd have to just, you're going to scroll up and see that the Malbim never thought that this parak was talking about a woman.
Okay.
That's the answer. It had nothing to do with a woman. When you're starting to explain this allegorically,
Are you saying Chayil has nothing to do with the woman?
I said that there were different, my opening comment was there are different perushim. Kiminyan ha-parshanim, kiminyan ha-perushim.
So who did you said Malbim?
I mentioned that
No, who was this who said
the Malbim is
so
not,
he thinks it's referring to each other?
right, he may be taking off from Rashi. Rashi was the one who said that Eshet Chayil was Torah. Yeah.
One second. The only problem is that even if it's an allegory, he's using the description of a woman to describe,
That's okay.
to praise the Torah. That I understand. But then the description of the woman would have to be consistent with reality, with what.
No. He's just on his frequency. He's now on a frequency of understanding this parak that is not his wife or the next neighbor's wife or any other Eshet Chayil out there. He's not talking about it. He's talking about something else.
The
So,
practical descriptions of weaving and
Beseder. So that's why they're being mefaresh. It's the same thing as Shlomo Melech in Shir HaShirim. Shir HaShirim has nothing to do with a love story of a man and a woman, the Dod and the Raya. Nothing to do with it. But all the descriptions are a love story. So he's using it. So again, he's using that's what an analogy is, a mashal and an imshal. So we pretty much know the mashal. We understand what he's saying in real terms, but the deep understanding of his message is not the woman of his house. It's something else. It's an abstract. When you talk about Torah, it's an abstract. And he's using imagery that are real. That's all. It's fair game in literature. You can do this. And Shlomo Melech said himself, and Shlomo in Shir HaShirim is doing that.
That's almost sick that the Torah's going to teach Torah.
Okay, so you have to see the Malbim from the top to see it. Okay, now let's just jump ahead a little bit in the Vilna Gaon, where he says in the next line. So what is the Pelach? He says the Pelach HaRishoyim, v'kapeha tomchu Pelach HaRishoyim shehem shlosha balei tshuva, but they're going to become balei tshuva. Shehi misayayat lehem. She is going to help. She's an NCSY person, right? She's a Chabadnik, and she's going to spread the good word to this Pelach. Who is Pelach? Who is Pelach? And so first of all, the Vilna Gaon quotes the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, Bali Taher Misayin. If somebody goes out there to do something pure, and it's going to be a difficult endeavor, Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to guide you along, so you will succeed. And therefore, she's Kapeha Tamchu Pelach. So who is the Pelach? So the next line where it says Upelach, jump a line, Reshe Tefot, Peti, Letz, and Ksil. So who's a Peti? Who's a Peti? A fool. Who's a Letz? A joker. Who's a Ksil? Another fool, a better fool, right? Fools come in different flavors, right? Right? One is Ashkenaz, one is Sfard. Okay, fine. So you have different levels of not serious people. How's that? Not serious people. And where does he get this? That Pelach is Letz, Ksil, and Peti Lesasil says V'hem Shlosha Balei Tshuva Kemoshe Amar in Mishlei Perak Aleph Pasuk Kav Bet, the first chapter of Mishlei, Ad Matai Petiyim Tavu Peti V'litzim. Let's I should read it inside. Latzun chamdi alahem uksilim yisanehu dad. So he says, if you look at the word pelech, so it's pei lamed chaf. So it's peti, letz, and ksil. So it says these are the three people who this Eshet Chayil is going to make them improve and make them into Bali Tshuvas. That's what it means. Tamchu palach. Again, look at the Vilna Gaon. He's reading into this text. Unbelievable things. And the next pasuk kavav pia potcha b'chokhmah. She'eino poteach piv ela b'chokhmah. She's very careful when she opens her mouth, and when she opens her mouth, pay attention to what she has to say. And the Vilna Gaon quotes the Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah, afilu sichat chulin shel talmidei chachamim tzricha Talmud. Even mundane talk of talmidei chachamim, take seriously. Consider what they said. I have a chapter in the book that I published on this Conversations I Have with the Rav. It's called Mundane Talk, where these off-the-cuff, some things had nothing to do with Torah and nothing to do, talking about the weather, so even something about something in sports, whatever. What Talmud can come out of it, and there were messages. How a person of the caliber of the Rav was careful how he said anything. Even if he talked about the weather, we talked about the, I don't want to say Verstunkene, but we talked about the Boston Red Sox, the Seder. So he spoke with clarity, and you can see that it was chokhmah in everything he said. And here,
The Torah converts it from feminine to masculine.
right?
She'eino poteach piv. So
Yeah,
it
it's
says in feminine, and he interprets it in masculine.
right, because he's not talking about a woman. He's not talking about a woman. Shlomo Melech. Listen, Shlomo Melech had women on his mind, but the Vilna Gaon had some, yeah, right? And then he says, what is Torat Chesed al Lashonah? Shalomed l'shem shamayim. So here the Vilna Gaon goes into a whole thing that Chazal asked the question in Masechet Sukkah, in the second line of this, the three-liner, Mechiyesh Torah shel Chesed v'yesh Torah she'eno Chesed. What does it mean, Torah Chesed? So the Gemara there says, Torah Lishma is the Torah Shel Chesed. Torah Shelo Lishma is the Torah She'ena Chesed. What is Lishma? What is Shelo Lishma? For its sake. What does it mean, Lishma? It means for its sake, not for its name. It means for its sake. So what does it mean, Torah Lishma? What is Torah She'elo Lishma? So generally it's understood that if you study Torah for the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, that's okay. That's Talmud Torah. That's Lishma. If you study Torah because of some other reason, you're studying Torah because you're going to become a big rabbi, and people are going to respect you, and maybe in some shul you'll be able to make a nice, easy living, or whatever it is. All kinds of secondary and external reasons. So that's called Torah Shelo Lishma. Fine, okay, we understand that. Chazal say mitoch lishma ba lishma. Mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. That sometimes the road to get to lishma is actually you have to start with educating children with candies. Then they talk about more than candies, other schar v'onish, reward and punishments. Till you get up to the highest level of Avat Hashem, you're not doing it for any punishment, or you're not depriving yourself from Averot because of punishments. You're doing it, or reward or punishment. You're doing it for the sake of being close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the highest level of the Shema. So the Vilna Gaon's prime student, who was Reb Chaim from Volozhin, don't confuse him with Reb Chaim Soloveitchik from Brisk, Reb Chaim from Volozhin, his grave is visitable in the city of Volozhin, who founded the yeshiva of Volozhin at the very beginning of the 19th century. I think it was 1803. And you have to realize the Vilna Gaon didn't have a yeshiva. He had a few students who came up to his house and he taught them. That's all it was, a handful of students. And they were responsible for spreading the Torah of the Vilna Gaon. And the most important personality was the Reb Chaim from Volozhin, who wrote a book, Nefesh HaChayim. In there, Rabbi Norman Lamb, Zichron Lebracha, wrote his doctoral dissertation at YU on Torah Lishma of the Chaim Volozhiner, where try to understand what Chaim Volozhiner had in mind. And there he said that if you study Torah for any outside reason, which can include, I want to be a good Jew, I have to know Dinei Shabbat. I have to know laws of Shabbat. So I'm studying the laws of Shabbat. Chaim Volozhiner said, that's Shalol Lishma. Really? So what's Lishma? What's Lishma? It says something else. It says, after, she said, the highest level of human being connecting to Kadosh Baruch Hu is prophecy, being a Navi. But we don't have a Navi today. So the next level under Nevuah is Torah Lishma. What does that mean? 24/7, engaging in Torah study. And just, that's all. Irrespective of the practicality of what you're studying, you are connecting to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's Torah Lishma. For no other reason but to connect to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Every other reason for Torah study is Shalosh Ma. And Rabbi Chaim Volozhiner knew that 99.99999% of people who do study Torah, he says it's Torah Shalosh Ma. It's not bad. It's important. For sure it's important. And only a Yechidei Sgula, very, 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 very few, can actually reach the Madrega, the level of Torah Lishma. So here he says, if you look at the next pasuk where it says Sheker Hachein Vehevel Hayofi, so here the Vilna Gaon, where I have this Aleph, Bet, and Gimel there, it says Halomed Bishvil Pniyot, person who studies Torah, that they should call him a Chacham. He enjoys being honored and being, people should give him donations of monetary gifts. Okay, that's one level. The second bet is Shalomed Bishvil Bor'o. He's learning because God asked him to learn Torah. He wants that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give him a nice portion of Olam Haba. And the third level is Hu rak tov birat Hashem kashet tzivanu lishmor v'lasot v'lo l'shum pniya klal. The only reason that he's studying Torah because he's God-fearing and he's following what HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked him to do. It has nothing at all to do with reward, whether it's divine reward, whether it's human reward, payments, salaries, tips, whatever it may be. None of that stuff. None of that stuff. We know that Rabbanim would, sometimes perform all kinds of services, and people acknowledge that. It's okay. The Rabbi was once at the cemetery visiting his wife's grave, and excuse me. And there was a gentleman there who was not a religious person, and walked over to the Rav and asked him, "Can you help me with a kelmole?" Okay, the Rav was gracious, went over to the grave, and gave a kelmole. The guy takes out a $50 bill, and the Rav looked at him and he says, "Excuse me, no, I don't say." He was pushing. What do you mean? No, it's okay. So he leaves. The Rav leaves, this guy is leaving, and he goes into the manager, the menahel of the Beit Kfarot, and he says, "Who is that rabbi?" He says, "That was Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik. He didn't want to take $50. No, he's not going to take $50. But, he runs a school in the Maimonides." This guy went, without even telling the Rav, and unloaded a major donation at the yeshiva, the Maimonides school. He said, it was a great story that came out later after the Rav passed away. So you have these various different understandings. But I want to get to Sheker Hachein Vehevel Hayofi. So let's look at the next page. Sheker Hachein Vehevel Hayofi. If you just go to source number 4, I'm quoting one of the Achronim. He's from the late 16th century, and he has some comments that he writes on Gemara. And he says there, in Masechet Ketubot, Sheker Hachein Vehevel Hayofi. How does this come into Masechet Ketubot? Because it talks about weddings, and it talks about Sheva Brachos, and it talks about Simchat Chatan V'Kala, and it talks about Kala Na'eh V'Chasuda. Kate Samarakdim Lifnei HaKala, Kala Nu'eh V'Chasuda. What does it mean, Kala Na'eh V'Chasuda? Oh, she's a beautiful Kala. Oh, she's gorgeous. And Chesed, here's the word Chesed, is going to come in. Right, gorgeous, very fine. So on this Gemara, the Maram Shif says, it says in Mishlei, Sheker Hachein Vehevel Hayofi. So what are we singing to this Kala Na'eh V'Chasuda? That's not what we should be glorifying. It was glorifying. There was once a real story. I'm not even going to mention the name of the rabbi who was in Switzerland, and under the chuppah he said. he said, you know, that there are two different types of beauty. There's the innerweinig beauty, the inside beauty, the internal beauty, and the außenweinig beauty. There's the external beauty, and this kala has innerweinig beauty.
Go try it, baby.
He said it under the chuppah. Yeah. I heard this from reputable people. It was, okay, he didn't realize, but he was trying to say that something special about the kala, but it didn't come out good. Okay, it didn't come out good. So what does the Maram Shif say? Sheker achen ve'evel yofi, isha yishetem titalal, bechein v'hayofi. Isha yirat Hashem hi titalal, with the chen and the yofi. What is he saying? Chen means the presence. Let's give a good translation for chen. Yofi is beauty. Chen is attraction? No. What?
It's a charm.
Grace, charm. Grace, charm. Yefet. Right. It obviously is something very positive. And he said, a woman who's Yirat Hashem, so then the chen and yofi have a place. You know when they don't have a place? When there's no Yirat Hashem. Then it's sheker and hevel. It's just nonsense. And it's vain. There's nothing to it. But if there's Yirat Hashem, hititalal, then the yofi and the chen for sure have a place. I remember when we were in high school, so there was a communist yeshiva, there was also a Beit Midrash. So some of the guys were already going on dates. And I remember one of the Rosh Yeshiva asked one of the guys, you know, so how was the date? Well, maybe he set up the shidduch even. How was the date? Well, okay, and how was the sheker and the hevel? How was the sheker and the hevel? Basically saying, does she look good? You know, you find how the seker, he said in Litvish, the seker and the hevel. How was the seker and the hevel? Right. So this idea of the Maram Shif was also echoed by the Vilna Gaon. So let's look what the Vilna Gaon says in source number 5 in a sefer called Kol Eliyahu. On the pasuk, "V'Rachel hayta yifat toar v'yifat mareh." Torah extols the virtue of the beauty of Rachel. Can't deny that. Hine Shlomo HaMelech alav shalom says in the end of Mishlei, "Sheker akayin v'hevel yofi isha yirat Hashem tetalal." Right? Ubemet, says the Vilna Gaon, in truth, matzanu gam ha'imaot asher nishtapchu behen b'chein u'biyofi. All our imahot. By Rivka it says v'hanara tovat mareh ma'od. Tzarich lomar that perush. What is the perush of the pasuk? Sheker achein ve'evel yofi. Hainu, that is to say, kishachein bilti yirat shamayim, yirat Hashem. There is no yirat Hashem there. Then the chen and the hevel, the yachein and the yofi are sheker and hevel. Vehem kinezim ve'af chazir. Then it's just like a piece of jewelry on the nose of the pig. Aval isha yirat Hashem hi titalal. That is to say, the gam hachein va'yofi titalal. Then this word, you're going to talk not only about Yirat Shamayim here, but you can talk about the virtue of the chen and the yofi, which is part of the Yirat Shamayim. And then the Gra goes on to explain another pasuk in a similar vein. So you know that yofi was something that was extolled. The people Chazal spoke about it positively in source number 6. Vayu Chayei Sarah me'ashana esrim shana sheva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah. The famous Rashi in the beginning of Chayei Sarah, that when she was 100 years old, she was like 20. She was 20, like 7. And Rashi says when she was 20, she was like 7 liyofi. The last line of source number 7. Of course, that didn't sit well with the Rav, and he dug up a variant on this medrash because a 7-year-old girl doesn't achieve her ultimate in beauty. Maybe she's cute, but a 20-year-old, what do you say? When she was 20, she looked like a 7-year-old? That's not exactly a compliment. But if you look at source number 8 in the Yalkut Shimoni, it says, Bat Meya Kibat Esrim Lenoi, when she was 100, she looked like a 20 in her beauty. That's an accomplishment. That's pretty good. And the other one was Bat Esrim Kibat Chet Sheva Lechet. When she was 20, she was was free of sin, like a girl who has no sins. That's what. In other words, the medrash here actually flips the noi, the yofi, and the chay. But the Rav said this makes more sense. That when she was 100 years old, she still looked like a 20-year-old. I don't know, she had some good cosmetics or something. I don't know, but she looked young. But this idea of understanding the Vilna Gaon, Sheker achein behevel yofi, isha yirat Hashem titalal, which we saw that the Vilna Gaon wasn't the only one in town who said it. The Maram Shif says it as well in a very, very abbreviated 2 words in the Masechet Ketubot. But we can understand the pasuk in Tillim, source number 9, in Perek Kaf, which is Lam Natseach Mizmor David Hashemayim, where we say Ya'ancha Hashem B'Yom Tzara, a very relevant pasuk, which ends with Ele v'rechev ve'ele basusim v'anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu naskir. Those with rechev v'susim are the chariots and the horses. I mean, that was good for Paro. Today it's the tanks and the artillery and the air force. So Ele v'rechev ve'ele basusim. Some people understand this, that okay, there are those who are in the military. Anachnu b'shem Hashem Elokeinu naskir. No, we're following HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's not the pshat. David HaMelech would never ever have written such a pasuk. He himself was a warrior. And the Gemara tells us in Masechet Moed Katan that the nickname of David HaMelech in Sefer Shmuel Bet, Hu Adino HaEtzni. Adin means like very delicate, and Etzni means with utzma, with strong. It says, yeah, when he was involved in military, he was like etzem, strong. And when he was involved in Torah, he was more adin nefesh, more delicate, and so on. Which is one line about David HaMelech that shows that he could have been a good Rosh Yeshiva of a Hesder Yeshiva in this country. And the one who really followed that was Rabbi Akiva, who had all of his Talmidim in Bnei Brak, of all things in Bnei Brak, battle ready for Bar Kokhba's army. And the pshat of Ele Barecha Ve'ele Basusim is Ele Barecha Ve'ele Basusim Bilvad. That's all they put their trust. But we who have Rechev V'Susim, who have a very, very good army, B'Shem Hashem Elokeinu Naskir. We go out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the time of Bayit Rishon with the Sefer Torah, with the Aron Brit, and so on. That's how we go out to battle. Shema Yisrael, that's why there was a Mashuach Milchama, a Kohen who specifically gave a pep talk. He was like a chaplain in the army, a Rav Tzva'i, and he said, Shema Yisrael, Atem krevim hayom lemilchama. You're now going to battle. Don't be fearful or anything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with you. And the Gemara says, you know why it starts with Shema Yisrael? Because even if all they have is Shema Yisrael, that's going to protect them in battle. It's an unbelievable piece of Chazal. And our Chayalim didn't go to battle without saying Shema Yisrael. And they asked for tzitzis, and they asked for tefillin, and they said Shema Yisrael. And they benched Goimel when they came out of there, all kinds of film clips on WhatsApp of Chayalim coming out of Lebanon and benching Goimel. And thank you, Takadosh Baruch Hu. Eile v'rechev ve'ele v'asusim bilvad. But those who have Anachnu b'Shem Hashem Elokeinu naskir, so their rechev and susim, their armaments, also have great value. And this is a type of pshat, of perush, that is in line with the way the Vilna Gaon understood Sheker Achein ve'Hevel Hayofi Bilvad. If that's all it is, then it's Sheker and Hevel. But Isha Yirat Hashem Hititalal, then the Chen and the Yofi have a very, very important part. And I'll just end with, so you know, the halacha is very appreciative and encouraging of doing mitzvot with aesthetic feeling. It's called Hidur Mitzvah. Hidur Mitzvah. So where do we learn Hidur Mitzvah? So the Gemara, and it's found in various places, from the pasuk in Shirat Hayam, Ze Eli va'anveyu. The word anveyu is naveh. Naveh. I will beautify and glorify the mitzvot, adorn the mitzvot. So fine. So we don't just go rock bottom, but we like to add ornaments to our mitzvot. It should be nice. This should be nice. That should be nice. Hitna'el lefanev b'mitzvot. It should be sukkana as talitna and so on. Fine. That we all understand. The Rambam digs up his own source. He says it comes from Bereshit. Cain and Hevel, they both brought korbanot. So Cain brings mi pri ha'adama, random, just picks out a rotten tomato here and a something there. Doesn't give much thought to it. Vehevel hevi gamhi mibchorot sono umichel vehen. He gives the firstborn, which was like the most sense those. That has connection, emotional connections. This is my baby, my firstborn, from the animal, from the flock, and the fattest, the richest and the fattest. That's he's willing to give up to Kadosh Baruch Hu, because he understood that if you're going to do something already, it should be behidur mitzvah. And I had a hunch that the Rambam dug this up because his name was Hevel, Sheker Hachein, the Hevel Hayofi. That Yofi somehow is linked to the Hevel of Parshat Bereshit, and Isha Yirat Hashem, he titalal. All right, that's Ulai. I'm going to have to ask the Rambam one day after Tchiyat HaMeitim whether he had this in mind. All right, next week in Mirz Hashem, Vayhi B'Chatzi Halayla. Okay.